across campus, online, and on 12:51 a.m. This is your student radio station.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Raw. My name's Ananya and I'm your host for today. Special feature on the Q Tip Bandits, a band that entered Boston's music scene in 2018. Since then, they've toured across venues in the US, UK, and Spain. Their debut single, Willow, reached over 50,000 plays in the first few weeks of its release, and they've just released their latest EP, Ain't It Great. I'm joined today by Leo Sun, lead guitarist, and Claire, bassist, who's here, and they're here to tell us more about the latest EP and also more about the band. So it's great to have you guys here. How are you guys?
Yeah, doing well. Happy to be talking to you. Nice to meet you.
Happy to have you. Nice to meet you guys as well. So I thought we could start by maybe telling us a little bit more about the Q Tip Bandits, how you guys formed. Give us a bit of your own introduction.
Would you like to take the lead on this one?
Sure. So the Q Tip Bandits, Leo and I were the first of the band to meet, of the current configuration of the band. And we met in our first semester of college at Berkeley College of Music in Boston. And we were in a recording session together. And in a music school, there's a lot of very cerebral energy attached to music, very intellectual. And we started playing music, and yeah, the kind of intellectual side of music was left behind, and instead it was more of a very emotional, very just natural connection with the music that we were playing together. And so you asked me to join the band that he had started and was starting. And that band kept evolving into what is now the Q Tip Bandits. And all of us in the band are friends, and we all started as friends before bandmates. And it's, yeah. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that definitely that play off of in this rehearsal that we had, Claire and I were brought on to a team to play live instrumentation for one of our friends who was a producer. And during this rehearsal, Claire started playing like 3 notes on the bass, and it was this very simple, like 3-chord thing that was very grounding in this like very floaty, cerebral place that I think we were all entering into. And yeah, the band just kind of, I had a lot of songs written before starting school there, and I wanted a band to play the songs with, and I definitely got more than I bargained for.
That's great to hear. It's nice that it happened like organically and you guys all met together, and as friends you got together. It's really sweet. So I guess the next question we've got as well is about the name. Interesting name. Can you tell us more about how that came about?
For sure. There's during this like original configuration of the band, we had a cellist. There was like a whole kerfuffle of instrumentation going on, and she wanted a name for her string quartet that she was playing in. So we just started shooting out names. There was like Velociraptor Infinite Jest, other just like outrageous things when we were just shooting the breeze. I had said Bandits, and she was just, she turned to me and she's like, not for my project, but that's a good idea. Save that for something. And I remember the first show that we played at this place called The Bebop. It's right down the street from where we all went to school. It's like this little Irish pub that does like open mics. And I remember we got some sort of feature spot there, and it was the first time we ever played out. And I introduced us as the Q Tip Bandits because it just felt right, and it just kind of stuck from there. And now it's become, we're the Q Tip Bandits because we clean your ears out and we steal your hearts.
Oh, that is so nice. Amazing. I have to say Velociraptors does have a ring to it though. Imagine.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll really tear into you.
Yeah, exactly. But great name. I love the story behind it as well. Next question. How would you describe your music? I don't know, some artists don't necessarily like to categorize themselves into any specific genre, but if you had to say some of your influences, some of the genres you would say you fall into, what would you describe yourself as?
We have described our sound in the past as indie strawberry pop rocks.
These are really creative ways to like describe things. So yeah, it's impressive.
It's definitely a question where it's like, it takes us a little while to answer, because I feel like not just us as artists, but like each artist has their kind of
Niche.
unique sound. And
Mm-hmm.
to put that into like a broader category is always a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We've gotten all kinds of labels throughout our shows and throughout our time being a band, from like reggae jazz to
That's a good, yeah, I like that.
like some, I don't know.
There's like ska punk, reggae jazz.
What? Oh my god, that's a thing? I didn't even know that was a thing.
Wow.
My god, okay, I've never heard of that in my life. That's the first. Interesting. Pushing the envelope, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, but to keep it simple, we just like to think of it as indie pop.
Indie
We
pop,
really like,
okay.
yeah, we really like bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I really like
Mm-hmm.
Hippocampus and
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, they're good.
yeah, they're killer.
Yeah. It was like yes.
Yeah, and
But
yeah, definitely. And so that kind of like high energy, feel good music,
mm-hmm.
and we got the horns in there too. And
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a high energy band when we're playing live. Trying to capture that on the recordings also, but that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's great to have. It's really uplifting, especially like right now, at least that's what we need to listen to. We want to have that kind of stuff in our ears, like, you know, things that lift us up. So it's great to hear. So I guess we can move on to talking about the EP as well. So the latest EP, Ain't It Great? Ain't It Great? Actually, I've listened to it. I loved it so much. So could you guys tell us a little bit more about maybe the story behind each song? Are there any favorite songs? Which songs were the hardest to write? Anything more you could tell us about them?
Sure. The Wolf is my favorite song right now. Off this record in particular, I just feel a very strong affinity toward that song. There's some songs where I feel like it takes months to write. You know, there's always that song that, for me, in my experience, where it's like, I'll sit with it, I'll toss it around, I'll change things here and there, whatever. The Wolf was one of those experiences where all the writing happened in one night, and it was this very, yeah. Yeah, it was
It
very,
doesn't sound like it.
I'm a firm appreciate that. I'm definitely a firm believer that like as artists we're like mediums toward like whatever creative energy is floating around in our realm. I don't even know what to call it, in our universe. And so our job is to be present for when the energy is passing through our space. And it rarely happens, but for that song, I really feel like there was some other energy that was, it just kind of flowed through, which I feel like a lot of artists that catch the bug have that experience and are just like trying to recreate that feeling. And The Wolf was like the first time I really felt that kind of flow while writing.
That's pretty surreal, honestly. I wish I could have that kind of experience. Really cool. So, is there like a just like story behind each specific song? What about What's Your Drug? That one was a cool one.
All the songs on the EP were some of the first ones that we have been playing as a band. So they've been in rotation for the longest. And they've also had the most time to kind of grow and change as songs, along with Willow, which was our single, which is also one of the oldest ones we've been playing. But I think to us, the entire EP kind of has become this representation of growth and of the different aspects of like youth and adolescence. And so like if you're looking at the EP in order, you've got like Ain't It Great, which is this fun, playful, kind of very energetic song, and it kind of captures just like the carelessness and playfulness of.
I just imagine a bunch of kids running out during recess, and they're all just like, "We get to go outside!"
Oh my goodness.
Like gang vocals in the background too.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun recording Ain't It Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the spirit of like high school, like not really caring and just having a good time.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, stepping out of like the social expectations of whatever that environment brings, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like the whole singing in the shade thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring out the inner rebel.
Yeah, definitely. I think What's Your Drug, like the story behind that too is I'm a person in recovery from substance abuse. And
Okay.
so I think in writing this song, it was the idea that like, and I there's a lot of songs that I love that kind of touch on this as well, but the idea that just like, we're all kind of hooked on something, and like, there's always this one thing in particular that I think we all have a calling toward, or something that's like an itch that like we are drawn toward this thing. And I think I just spend a lot of time with that question of like, what could that be for people in general, and just delving more into that. And that's become sort of like that angsty, self-reflective journey of adolescence as well, to connect it back to like what this project has started to become in the process of recording it and releasing it.
Yeah, I think also like recognizing that thing which you have such an attachment to or a passion for helps you realize like the control it has over you, especially if it's like negative, like literally in terms of substance abuse, or in terms of like bad habits that people cling to, or it's interesting. It's a lot, it's open to interpretation, honestly. It can even be like a passion, like you have a passion for something and your passion consumes you, like your job, or like it's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did love the EP. Moving on, I wanted to ask also about, so you guys were a band that started in university, and this is a university radio station. So we've got a lot of upcoming artists and bands in the university as well. We have a band society. We have a student-led record label. So I just wanted to know if you guys could tell us a little bit more about your best times together as a band, your worst times together as a band. What were the ups and downs, the struggles? Were there points where you felt like, oh, it isn't worth doing it? Do you felt like you weren't being recognized enough? And how did you overcome that?
I think speaking to some of the best times we've had as a band, well, first of all, it's always a good time when we're together as a band. I think we're very fortunate to be able to play music with like some of our best friends, and just, it's always a good time. And I think that that especially kind of comes out when we all are traveling together. So like when we have been on tour, for example, like our short Europe tour that we did, like you mentioned earlier, we hit places in the UK and Spain and Germany and Belgium. But it was a lot of time to spend together, which was also something new for us. We really got to know the other aspects of people's personalities that don't usually come out unless you spend like such a good amount of time.
Right, continuous time with people.
Yeah, the black and the white and the gray, everything is like revealed.
Sleeping selves, we got to experience what we got like after so many hours of just being on the road. But it really was like a bonding experience. And those are some of my fondest memories of being in this band, is just catching trains and planes together and like almost missing the plane, but just barely getting on. And just having the opportunity to travel and like carry our our big heavy instrument cases
Right.
through airports. I think fondly on those memories and just being on the road with the band.
Totally. Yeah. I very much agree with that. I love being on the road. I love spending time in the music, but outside of the music with everyone in the band. And I think recently with our shows in Boston before quarantine started, before all of the safety precautions were put in place, my favorite thing was going out for dinner before or after a show and just like being able to hang out and just spend time with people and spend time with the band and like really understand and connect with the people that I'm having such an intimate experience with in creating music. There's always the running joke that like band members, like all the band members fall in love with each other when they form the band, and it's like this like relationship that moves on. It really does feel that way. Like there's this connection that even if like our trumpet player Macklin, he's in Colorado right now, but I feel this connection with him that's just there because we share this creation, and it's always nice to be able to spend time with the band.
Yeah, it becomes like a family, I guess. It's sort of like your support system. You got through the hard times, you got through the best times, and you made really cool art together. So that also connects you, I guess.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of trust that goes into playing music with people. Yeah, it's very
yeah. It's a lot of like vulnerability that you also like expose to a tight knit group of people. So I guess that also brings you close together. Is there something you want to say to artists in university or young musicians in general, to keep them motivated, to convince them maybe to pursue their passion in music? Because a lot of people sometimes get persuaded otherwise to go into other fields because it's tough out there and not everyone can make a living out of it necessarily. So what would you have to say to people who are not sure or afraid or on the fence?
That's a really good question. I think the truth of the matter is that I'm like also constantly unsure and afraid.
It's okay, you can have that, so that's relatable.
Right. It's definitely like it is taking a risk. It is definitely, but there's the I heard very recently in some like TED Talk podcast or whatever it was that risk is far different from the actual consequence. And risk is like a perceived danger of this thing. Risk is like percentages, risk is probability, risk is all this. But even a high risk situation means that there's larger room for error. But having faith in one's ability and in one's product or whatever one's doing is like the driving force. Like I wake up and I remind myself to like think about success. Like really, it's like
keep yourself
I
motivated.
absolutely. I have to convince myself that like it's easy to convince myself that we're making great music because I get to play music with great musicians. And so every time we get together, I'm like, wow, everybody sounds great right now. But it's like the downtime that's like and because there's great musicians out there. And everybody's music has a place. That's at least the way I see bands. You know, everybody's music has a niche. If we know how to find our niche, our music has a place no matter what. I think it's in this behind the scenes downtime where it starts to feel overwhelming because there's so many things going on. There's so many decisions to be made. And I really just have to consciously tell myself that like to focus on success and focus on like, and really telling myself that what we're doing is worthwhile and we're doing a great thing. And it's a lot of learning how to talk to myself positively.
Yeah, that's important. It's easier said than done as well. So like trying to remind yourself, keep going. Yeah.
Sure.
Inspirational stuff. Deep.
On that too, I think a lot of people who are starting out, like you said, get discouraged because results aren't happening as quick as they want them to, or like the expectations are so high. And I think especially in the way that media portrays what starting a band is like and what being a young musician is like, there's a lot. I feel like all of the shows and TV, like movies that I grew up with that had bands, it was like one day you're forming the band. The next week the band is on the radio. The next week they're playing this huge venue somewhere and like filled.
Right, it happens in life.
Yeah.
Line is so quickly, and so I think a lot of people who start bands, and I was in the same boat too. When I was playing in high school bands, I was getting really discouraged because I was like, why isn't all of this happening to us yet? You know, where's our big break? And I think the older I get and the more experience I have playing music and playing in this band especially too, it's like you learn to celebrate the little accomplishments as you go. And if you just take the time to be thankful for like, wow, like 20 people came out to the show tonight.
Right.
And then the next night,
30 people came out, right? And all of a sudden you got like a room of like 150 people, and it's like, okay, like this is starting to become something.
Right.
Nice.
I think the attitude that we try to take that keeps us going is we're always thankful for the people who are there, and we don't try to focus on the people who aren't there.
Play for the people that are there, not for the people that aren't. And there's no small victories in this, you know, like we got together to rehearse today and this song sounds great. That's something to be happy about. And
exactly.
just like continuing to recognize that like we're doing something that we love to do, because it's easy to lose sight on that when it starts to become, oh, I want success, I want to be there when I'm here right now. But I think we try our best to take that perspective of like, you know, we're doing something that we love to do, and that for some reason or other we have the privilege really to be able to pursue it.
Nice. I think a lot of young people would be glad to hear that, something relatable as well. It's like we don't see it enough as well. Like you said, all the movies sort of portray everything as like sunshine and rainbows all the time, but behind the scenes it's a struggle.
Yeah, it was yeah, our first show, I feel like it became very evident after our first show, where it was like, oh cool, I put up the poster, I made a Facebook event, there's gonna be like 180 people there, and there's like people, and I was like, wow, okay, that's you know, the expectation was, I overshot the expectation, but then it's like Claire said, be grateful for who's there, not for who's not, you know. It's always been the motto.
Yeah. So our last question, a bit more of a fun one. Do you have a pre-performance ritual? What of your favorite places to perform what have they been? And which places would you like to perform in the future? Assuming the situation sort of fixes itself, but like being optimistic.
You take it first. I want to hear your pre-show ritual, because I think you know my pre-show ritual. Oh, as a band pre-show ritual?
That's what
I was thinking individual and as a band. I have my own thing. I get away from everybody to like psyched up. Yeah.
I feel like personally I'm always just so excited before a show. I don't necessarily have like a pre-show ritual that I do, but usually as a band before a show, we like all get in a little huddle. We've got a little we got a little
yeah, our buddy one of our friends, Brian, he's a friend of ours who lives in New York, but he used to go to school with us, and before one of our first shows he came up to us and he was like, no, Q Tip Bandits, no, Q Tip Bandits, no, Q Tip Bandits. So now we just huddle in a circle before the show and we get all our hands and feel like a sports team, and then we do the na Q Tip Bandits chant.
Yeah, it's fun. It feel like a sports team before you go out into the big game.
Yeah, it's rough out there. You gotta be prepared.
Yeah, it's us. It's just us up there. You know, we gotta stick together.
Yeah. It's super peppy.
For real.
That's what I always look forward to before a show. It's that little pre-show huddle. but I know your routine is very different.
Yeah,
Oh, what's your routine? Is it secret? Are you allowed to share it publicly, or is it is that why it works?
It's totally. I'm very, very happy to share. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a religious person, but I believe in the power of prayer and like setting out intentions. And so I'll take a moment to like remind myself to like not try to control the show and like be in the flow. And so I'll step off to the side and like go to the bathroom or something and like talk to myself, jump around in front of the mirror and like shadow box or anything to get my heart rate going. Cause my secret, I feel like, is like the Incredible Hulk is like, I'm always nervous. Whereas Bruce Banner is always angry. I feel like my pregame routine is that I'm always nervous.
Oh.
And so like I do a lot of like getting myself psyched up, getting the blood going. That's what I like to do.
Nice. Yeah, give yourself your own TED talk.
Yeah, positive self-talk in the mirror. Yeah.
You can do this. You got this. Great.
Yeah, for real.
And also, what have your favorite places to perform been in the past, or favorite performances, and why?
I've always feel like whatever the last show is that we've played has, because right now I'll think like we played this homecoming show from tour at Thunder Road in Somerville, and it was the largest crowd we've played to. So many people came out to like show their support and to like share the space with us. And there's that level of like deep appreciation that I can say, I feel like it's safe to say that we feel for that moment. But when I think about what's my favorite show, it always ends up back toward the last one we played, which is like,
I think that's fair.
Yeah. It's very much like, oh, but that one was like when we were the most tight. That's like where we were really in it. And it always seems like the last show is the one where we were really in the groove. And
yeah. And I think it always helps too when your friends are there in the audience. And I think that's
absolutely
when we play our shows like in our hometown in Boston, home city, just to have that energy of your friends and like the closest people in your life being like right there in front of you, that's something that is really irreplaceable. It's hard to get that when you're on tour and you don't know the people in the audience as well. It's still like a wonderful feeling to play for people, but that feeling of when you're in your home city and you're playing and the people know the words, are not like
place like
shouting
home
at you, and I think those will always be our favorite shows.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, to touch on that, it's like on tour, it's always like so exciting to see who shows up because we don't really know what to expect. The same goes for being at home, but there's always the moments where it's like, usually here we can draw a bigger crowd than not, and sometimes we don't see any familiar faces, and all of a sudden, like I'm thinking of one thing in particular. We were playing this house show at this place called the Garden of Alston in Alston, like right down the street from where we live, and our buddy Sam shows up 5 minutes before our set. And the feeling of seeing him walk in and like there's the crowd of people in front of us and he walks right up to the front, he squeezes through and he's like, yeah, and I'm like, okay, this is like it's just so much energy. And I think the whole thing is just like a give and take, and to have somebody in the crowd, like Claire was saying, that knows us outside of the music, knows us on a deeper level, it's like it's an anchor. You know, I won't say that their energy is worth more than anybody else's energy, but they're like a beacon. I know that they're there, and that's always reassuring. Yeah.
As for shows that I think we're looking forward to playing, personally, I'm very excited to get back on the road again. And whenever things clear up, whenever we can get back on the road, I know we've got a a summer tour planned for this July in like the US Midwest and East Coast area. Beyond that though, I would be very excited to come back and play in the UK. That was one of the places that stood out most when we were on tour in Europe. I think we all really loved being in England.
Yeah. Our drummer that was touring with us, who is no longer in the band, he when we were there, he was like, "I'm moving to London." Yeah. I still believe it will happen one day. Andrew Paolini will move to London, England, but we'll see.
Yeah, London is really fun. I went down as well, but half our uni is actually it feels like it's from London. But that's all we've got for today, I guess. But thank you guys so much for coming in. It was really great talking to you. All the best with the EP. It sounds great. I hope it does well. I hope more people listen to it, and definitely we're going to promote it on Raw as well. So thank you guys for joining us again.
Yeah,
Great,
thank you for having us. Yeah.